everyone, welcome to Good Vibes Gaming for another discussion. My name's Brandon Miracle, and today I'm joined by the lovely John Cartwright and Daniel Alba. How you doing, boys?
Is this the Daniel
Good.
Alba?
It's me. How y'all doing?
How did we get him?
It's we can't reveal our secrets, but
Random encounter.
Yeah.
The chance rate was up
Oh.
for Daniel's right now.
well, I guess our secrets are revealed. But in case that didn't clue you in on what we're talking about Pokemon today. And I've been wanting to talk about Pokemon because, it's been a while since Gen 9 launched. We've got Pokemon Legends EA on the way, but if we're going by the regular calendar kind of schedule for the Pokemon series, theoretically we'd be looking at Generation 10 sometime next year. And I thought it would be a good time to kind of reflect on Generation 9, what worked, what didn't, and look ahead to Generation 10. Talk about what we want, and if we actually think it'll happen next year, because I think there are some opinions about that. But to get started, Daniel, I want to talk to you first about Generation 9, because I think amongst the three of us here, you're probably the biggest Pokemon fan.
I think so. If we look into our timers for how much time we spent, this whole Switch generation on Pokemon games, mine is probably embarrassingly high for certain titles than others. Because even now, Pokemon's entered a crazy shift going from a series that's only been known to do its major releases on a handheld, only on little handhelds. But now we have everything's consolidated to the Switch, the home console. And so it feels like their practices have shifted a bit. And we've seen a lot of releases just on the Switch itself, from side games to the mainline titles for Gen 9 and Gen 8, for example. And it's been interesting to see how that's shifted, especially with Gen 8 Sword and Shield kind of leaning a lot more towards the whole open world area with the wild area, and then just completely embracing that with Scarlet and Violet. And it's reached very divisive reception, to say the least, from everybody.
Did you play Gen 9, John?
I've played every Pokemon game that's ever existed, apart from Trading Card 2 and the Pokemon Tetris, and probably more.
Pokemon Tetris.
I don't think I know offhand how you felt about Gen 9.
I liked it. I thought it was very ambitious. You can't really fault Game Freak for not having a vision. With every game on the Switch, I feel like they've pushed the series forward. And Gen 9, I think it was a lot of fun. But there were small hiccups, and I'm not even just talking technically. There were just small hiccups that kind of made me disinterested after a while. I played the whole thing, but I didn't stick with it in the way that I would other Pokemon games. I didn't really stick around just to do like battles and trading and try and finish the Pokedex and all that. And I think that was just partly because I found that while it was great to just walk around the world without a load screen or anything, there were so many just barriers to that. Like, it was a big open world game, but you couldn't really go anywhere you wanted. Like, you could go anywhere you wanted, but there's no... Like, the game doesn't always like guide you that way. You still kind of have to do things in a certain order. It's like it's tipping its toe in Breath of the Wildism, but it isn't actually built around that. And so while I enjoyed it a lot, I don't know, there's something about Gen 9 that didn't keep me stuck around.
I'm kind of in a similar boat. There was a lot about Gen 9 I liked, specifically its story I found really endearing. But the actual structure of the game, I think, left a lot to be desired. Like you said, it doesn't really allow you to go anywhere you want. One of the big faults of the game, if you ask me, is the fact that those gym leaders don't scale with level. They're preset.
That's the biggest thing, right? Like, you can go anywhere, but you really do have to battle them in order. Otherwise, you're just struggling.
The only major advantage to being able to go everywhere you want is being able to, capture certain Pokemon from certain areas in, wherever you want to go. But without that kind of gym leader scaling, it doesn't feel very freeing. And it makes the actual element of exploration, to me at least, feel secondary to the gameplay. When you make an open world game, if we're going by Breath of the Wild standards, the exploration should come first,
Right.
not second.
Yeah. The major difference is that when you have a game like Breath of the Wild, you pretty much get all the tools you need in the Great Plateau before you actually are set off to explore everywhere. Whereas in Scarlet and Violet, you have to kind of go through certain trials to earn your mount's abilities to actually traverse, to climb walls, to glide and everything. And that is the major like gate that is keeping a lot of us from exploring the world like a lot more openly and freely. And yeah, as you're saying, the scaling is the most important one, I think, because I guess it would take a lot more technical work to have every gym leader have like 8 different teams depending on what level you are as you approach, as how many badges you have as you approach it. But like I feel like that would have been worth it. That would have made a lot more of a cohesive journey, because there's precedence for that sort of thing. There's like the Pokemon Origins anime that had like, you saw Brock asking Red how many badges you have, and he has a specific set of Pokemon to pull out for that person. And I was like, yeah, just do that in the games. That'd be so much cooler.
That'd make a lot of sense. Like, Sword and Shield didn't really have this issue, because the wild area was sort of like a hub that's stretched into different towns, and you really have to go in linear order. Now, you could catch Pokemon from like way above your level there, but you're still sort of funneled in a particular direction. Whereas in Scarlet and Violet, you can go anywhere. But the story and progress doesn't really go anywhere. And even if we're just talking, like, even if you do follow the straight path, I think the core gameplay is a lot of fun. It's fun just to walk into Pokemon in the wild, throw the ball at them, catch them, and walk off. It is genuinely, the core is good. And I found like a shiny Magikarp within like the first 20 minutes, I want to say. Like, once you get Pokeballs, I found one just in the stream. You can find shinies so much easier than before they appeared in the overworld. But like, even the core structure, though, like, you get some gym missions which just feel like I remember one where like, you're pushing a giant fruit around or something, and it feels like something you might see on the eShop, you know, like one of those just sort of we've just learned Unity, so we're gonna put like some physics in here. That's what it feels like. Not all the game is equal to the rest of its quality, but I think the overall whole is good, though. It has like a bunch of different sub-objective, whether it's, you know, doing gym leaders or taking on the evil team. I think those sub-objectives work great within an open world.
Yeah, and they allow the story to do some more interesting things, like the overall stakes throughout the game's plot, at least until, you know, the final moments of the game, are generally very low, but there's a lot of heart in them. The stories in this game felt a lot closer to what the anime may have done than just a traditional Pokemon game, and I really appreciated that. I love the stories, just the small scale stories about the students, and, you know, some anxieties that they might have, or, you know, in one case, a sad dog story. I'm a sucker for those. And I would like to see Pokemon continue kind of pushing in that direction, because the game managed to do it while also having a satisfying conclusion that does raise the stakes.
There's a lot to be said for the multiplayer too. Like this game really is ambitious. Like, it's a full-scaled open-world Pokemon. We can also roam around online with your friends, which is just kind of nuts. They just push the scale way beyond what they probably should have. And you know, it's held together by string, obviously, but they still go way too far, like way further than they should have. But it can work pretty well.
Yeah, the ideas are there. Like, I would have never imagined Pokemon would be the kind of series where you'd have like 4 players roaming around just this world, all independently of one another, just kind of doing your own thing. Because I did that a few times as well, especially with the DLC, with the most recent one. And it's so cool to like actually be able to, you know, interact that way. You can trade Pokemon just right there. It makes it so easy. There's of course like the Terra Raid battles, which are this is pretty much the replacement for like the Dynamax battles for Sword and Shield.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's you can see it all over. Like, there is a lot of passion put into the game. It's just the way it's kind of held together. It kind of falls apart in places, and I know that's definitely been something that's taken a lot of people out of the experience overall.
Speaking on multiplayer specifically, one of the things that frustrated me a lot was that when you built a room, the room doesn't stay open. People can't join it once it's launched.
Sure.
So, and because of all of the problems that the game had, oftentimes me and my group, someone would crash. You know, their game would just crash. That happened. And once that happens, you know, the whole room has to be dismantled, restarted, so that person can rejoin. And that was really, really frustrating. It took a lot of time out of the experience. It's like Animal Crossing, where you have to wait through the entire rigmarole for every single person to join your town. But imagine that, and one person drops, and you have to do that from scratch. That's what Pokemon's like.
Yeah.
That's exactly what I was thinking of too. Was
it kind of disincentivized using the feature because it took so much time to get set up. And that's really bothersome, because exploring the open world with your friends, that's like a dream feature for a Pokemon game. I'm still surprised they even did it, but it's not quite there.
Yeah. But when it is there, though, like when you've all connected and you're all ready, just chilling out, it's fun. It's like Animal Crossing again. Like, you don't have to make any progress. You can just sort of roam around together and just chill out and talk, and it's great for that. And like, there were a lot of like out of context gifs of like the game looking broken. A lot of it was just people like running into someone else's battle. That's not a glitch. You can just walk into someone's battle. That's just part of it.
Mm-hmm. I mean, we also have that famous one from Daniel specifically, the drill attack.
there was when the game didn't like separate NPCs from battles, and so there was a battle in which a young girl was just walking along drinking her coffee, and then a Pokemon uses a drill attack, and it looks like she just gets absolutely obliterated. Yeah. And it's just like, oh man, there were so many like clips of glitches and weird things happening right when that was coming out, and that seemed like to be the biggest talking point, which probably isn't what the Pokemon Company wants people to focus on for a game like this.
I have one criticism of the soundtrack, actually. So I felt like some areas had really good battle themes, and other areas were pretty weak. And I didn't love it being in all these areas, because some of them I was like, it got tiresome to hear the same pretty short clip that is repeated over and over again. And I think if the vibes were better with some of these songs, it might have just felt better to be in those regions. But otherwise, I'd rather avoid those areas.
Yeah, it's interesting that you say that, because off the top of my head, I can't think of any single piece of music in the game other than the Area Zero theme.
Area Zero
is one of the weakest soundtracks for sure.
There's like one theme that sounds very like Western style when you're in like the deserty area, but that's like the only one that can. That's the only one I can think of.
I don't like it. I know exactly which one you mean. It's because it's so grating for me.
It's a shame that the game doesn't quite reach all the heights. There's a lot of good ideas, but the execution falls flat basically across the board. And I agree with you, John. You said this earlier, that we have to appreciate Game Freak going for the innovation, reaching for the stars. We should be encouraging that. It's not always going to work out, and that's okay, I think. Like, if you don't try, then, it's just going to be a stale formula. Like, look what happened to the Zelda series, where Ocarina of Time was such a big hit, and then every 3D Zelda game after that for a very long time was basically the exact same experience, and people got tired of it.
Yeah.
So Pokemon trying something new here, I think, is great and should be encouraged, but unfortunately, I think the problems kind of outweigh the positives in the case of this game.
Yeah, it definitely didn't come out as crispy as it could have been. It could use a lot more time in the oven. But yeah, Pokemon can't really be compared to like Assassin's Creed or other like annual franchises, because a lot of them, like how 3D Zelda did, just kind of did the same game with new areas, new characters, and just did it over and over again. Not a single Pokemon game on the Switch is the same. Like every single mainline game, every spin-off, like every single one is distinct. Like Let's Go has like, real-time throwing mechanics and it's top-down. Then you've got Sword and Shield, completely different, like linear mix of the wild area and traditional Pokemon, and real-time, like you can walk into battles. Scarlet and Violet, open world. Shining Pearl and Brilliant Diamond, Shining Pearl, that's like the most traditional one. Every single one is different. I think that is something that's worth some recognition.
Yeah, and then you have Pokemon Legends thrown into
Yes,
that as
yeah.
well, which is a vastly different experience, so much so that it's now its own series. And I think it's worth mentioning, and this is probably true of myself, that, a lot of the criticisms that might, be levied against Gen 9 are in direct response for how polished of a game Pokemon Legends is in comparison. It's maybe a more limited scope, but that game hardly ever breaks in any way.
Right. It's a lot more polished for sure. It's still like it could use a bit more polish. Like there's a lot of Legends which doesn't necessarily look very good. I remember some lakes just having like no shading at all. But yeah, compared to Scarlet and Violet, it's like it's a dream game.
Functionally speaking, is where I'm coming from.
Sure.
Yeah, they've experimented all across the board with how much they want to do like open world and the scope as well. Where it's like I do enjoy how Legend Arceus did it, where there's specific areas to have an open world instead of like Scarlet and Violet having the entire world just open to you all at the same time. That's the kind of linearity that I think I'm kind of old school with Pokemon, so I think I enjoyed a bits and pieces of Sword and Shield more so than Scarlet and Violet, simply because there was some direction, traditional direction as far as where to go next, but there was still that open world area. Some kind of mix of that in Legend Arceus I think would be fun for another generation, but that's totally something that we have no idea what direction Game Freak is going to take with the next generation. Just because of varying degrees of success with these titles, and I hope that Scarlet and Violet can be like, we're always talking about them just the stepping stone, and the next one will be better, right? We're always saying that they're gonna do better with the next one, and I'm hoping for that here too.
I guess they won't go back though, will they? Like, I don't think they're going to shrink the scope. Maybe in like a spin-off game, but I guess the next gen is like I don't think they're going to go back to linear. It's probably going to get more open.
Yeah, they'll probably just reserve that for any remakes that they do, like the fabled one day Gen 5 remake. That's probably going to keep its form, and I'm scared of what that's going to look like, because no one's going to be happy with that, no matter what it looks like.
Gen 5 is my favorite Pokemon gen, so I'm really looking forward to that one. I hope it
get a choir on the phone.
It's up there for me too.
Yeah. The actual locales, the locations in the open world in Gen 9, just not very interesting. There's nothing like very distinct about any of the single locations. They're just kind of, here's a different biome, but no particular landmarks that are memorable.
Sure. Just grass, desert, mountain, snow.
That is pretty much it. Yeah.
Yeah. And Legends, obviously, the scope is smaller, but you do have these big areas, and I can distinctly remember all kinds of locations in Legends because there was thought put into, like, how do we make this area look unique and feel different? But there's just not a lot of that in Scarlet and Violet, and I think that takes away from the open world experience quite a bit.
It would be cool to, like, I don't know, whatever the next generation is, like, just have things be a bit busier, like seeing like a railway going across the world, and like a train goes around or something. Maybe there's like maybe one of the biomes is just one big casino, right? Like, instead of having a casino in the town, just the entire area is a casino with casino-themed Pokemon in. I don't know. It's just something dumb like that. I want something a bit more distinct than just walking around different colored fields all the time.
Yeah, and in addition to that, I think it would be cool if there were like NPC trainers or maybe even story-related trainers you just see out in the field doing stuff. Just, you're walking along one of the routes and suddenly an NPC trainer is in a wild Pokemon battle and you can sit there and watch and see if they're going to catch it or not.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
I think that'd be cool.
Brings things a bit more alive. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's why I was thinking more, there's a lot more memorable locations in Sword and Shield just because they're like actual towns that have these very distinctive looks to them, or they're very distinctive like visual points, whereas everything just kind of blends together with Scarlet and Violet. Like you have that like very awesome looking mushroom looking forest in Sword and Shield. I remember that very well. And then you've got like the like the little farmlands that had like all the wooloo around them as well.
Yeah,
I remember these locations, and I can't tell you even some of the city names for Scarlet and Violet at this point.
They
all
sucked
kind
to
of blend.
be in though. Like
Yeah.
they're the worst looking places in the game, and like any shops, you don't really go in them. Like, it's just kind of like a menu. Nothing felt tangible.
Yeah, not having interiors was a big setback, I think. It feels like such a small thing, in retrospect, but like, you look at Breath of the Wild and I hate to compare it to that game because the scopes are so much different, but like when you see a building, you can go inside it. It's a small thing in the end, but like it helps with the immersion and the feeling of this is a complete place.
Yeah.
Well, you most games you can go into a house and there's like a person in there and their Jigglypuff is just kind of hanging out and you can talk to them and it's like,
and they tell you why they like spaghetti so much and I'm like, great, thanks, and then I leave.
Yeah. With Scarlet and Violet though, like whenever you go into an actual interior, the game loads. I guess that's the issue with this engine probably couldn't just let you go in a place without it loading, and that would suck for an open world. You had to like load the world again. It's like I get why they didn't do it, but also like why is it this way though? Like why make an open world game with an engine that can't do that?
Yeah, on a system that can pull it off.
Yeah,
and we know that.
I absolutely do not take people saying that this is all the Switch is full, because Switch has so many games that do more than Scarlet and Violet and look better than Scarlet and Violet and run better than Scarlet and Violet.
And just because we're knocking the game's performance and things like that, I want to make it very clear that I don't blame Game Freak for that. We know that the structure of how these games are developed is not ideal.
No.
Those schedules are tight, and developers are not being allotted the time they need to make the games that they want to. That frustration trickles down to the consumer in the end.
Yeah.
I'm sure the people working on them feel the same way as we do.
Oh yeah, I'm sure that they know exactly what was wrong with the game. It'll be interesting to see what the Pokemon cycle looks like for this game in the future. Because right now we're seeing a resurgence for Sword and Shield. I'm not sure if you guys have seen any of it, but I'm seeing a lot of love for Sword and Shield online right now. And that always happens. Like X and Y were hated when they were new, and now they're loved as well. So I wonder when the kids who grew up with Scarlet and Violet get older, whether they're going to be like, oh yeah, remember these ones? They're the best.
I am curious about their perspective, though. Like, I want to know what resonated with them. Because, it may not have landed for me all the way, but it will for someone, and I'd like to know why. Yeah. I think that there's good discussion there.
Oh yeah, as someone that also appreciates Sword and Shield, I think it just feels like we took a classic title from the handheld era and put it on the just in the purest form, just put it on the Switch, but just added like a wild area.
Yeah,
I feel like I remember a lot more characters from Sword and Shield than I do Scarlet and Violet.
That's
like,
not the best in the
series.
Characters. The humans in Sword and Shield are great.
They're so distinct and memorable, and like there are people that they still talk about characters like Leon and Sonia and Marnie and Nessa, and like you can name so many characters from that, and I can't name as many from Scarlet and Violet. And even though they had like a really solid story that kind of like came together at the end, and the Sword and Shield story is nothing like that.
I think it's worth noting too that like a lot of those characters in Sword and Shield got a lot of time to be fleshed out and appreciated more through the anime. Like Leon especially, we had the conclusion of Ash's journey with a big battle between him and Leon, and it's one of the most spectacular things the anime's ever done.
Yeah.
So of course people are going to love Leon because he had a chance to be something.
True.
But I don't think that a lot of the characters in Gen 9 have been afforded that opportunity, which is a shame. But the anime is going in a different direction now, and, it is what it is.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah. I always love any Pokemon game where the gym leaders act like they're in an actual community and like they're kind of like colleagues with each other. And they did that a lot more in Sword and Shield because you could see characters like Raihan just showing up every now and then. Leon would show up here and there, and they would all just be kind of interacting with each other like they're actually, they're part of this gym leader community. But everyone just felt so just confined to their own areas in Scarlet and Violet, so to the point where I can't really remember like what their personalities were like at this point.
I remember
except
Larry.
the businessman, Larry.
He's my man.
Larry's the best.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I resonate with Larry so much. He's just for better or for worse.
It's funny because you get a rug pull with him later in the game as well, where he makes an additional appearance, which I absolutely adored.
He's the man working 2 shifts.
That's so funny. It means that the devs, they knew that Larry was going to be popular, so they just put him there. But I think before we move on to the future of Pokemon, someone asked in our chat earlier, favorite Gen 9 Pokemon from each of us before we move on. And for me, it's Palafin, the dolphin. I love that it evolves and it doesn't really change at all until you discover its switch out mechanic and it becomes a superhero.
Yeah.
That's such a fun idea. I love it.
I guess I got a basic answer. I love Spirigator. I think Spirigator is a really cool design. I also love the long Diglett. Awful, but I love it.
Wiglet?
Wiglet, yeah.
Oh, there's some fun ones in here. I love the new form for Quagsire, which is Clodsire. Just a friendly. I love Wooper and Quagsire themselves, and I'm so happy that they got a new form. Clodsire is fantastic. It's just a loaf of a friend shape Pokemon. Great typing too.
I guess that's something we didn't really touch on, but there were a lot of great new designs in Gen 9, and that's something I think really never changes. Pokemon's designs are always fun and interesting, so I never expect that to fall short.
No.
Definitely.
So going into Generation 10, we mentioned this earlier, but on the traditional Pokemon schedule, we would be expecting it to make an appearance in 2025. What's interesting is we've had a sequel to Pokemon Legends announced, Pokemon Legends ZA, back in, February of this year?
Yeah.
10 months ago, and we still have not seen gameplay. When the original Legends was revealed, we got gameplay in that trailer. Brief gameplay, but there was gameplay. And we saw it multiple times throughout the year before its eventual release in January the following year. So I'm curious, based on the fact that we've seen nothing from Legends CA, and we've heard from Pokemon Company International that they're evaluating how their development looks. I'll start with you, John. Do you actually think Gen 10's even going to make an appearance next year?
Logically, everything you said makes sense about how the time frames add up. But for no reason, I have no reason to believe this, but I just say no. I feel like this isn't the time for Gen 10. If we're following just patterns, then sure, but I just don't feel like it's time. I feel like they've learned lessons from Scarlet and Violet. I think they're going to take a bit more time to cook. And it's not just because of new hardware. I don't think Switch 2 is the magic answer to all of this. I just think that they're going to keep cooking with that game. Focus on Legends. With the first Legends, they probably didn't expect it to sell quite as well as it did. Because not only did it release, was it 2 months after the Gen 4 remakes? But it also released 9 months before Scarlet and Violet. And it still managed to sell, I think, 13 million, maybe a bit more than that. And that's just one SKU compared to the usual 2 SKUs that Pokemon has. So I reckon they have a lot more confidence in Legends this time.
And what do you think, Daniel?
The scope has definitely changed for these titles, and I also think that it's going to probably be a little bit longer till we see anything for Gen 10, which I'm kind of happy for. I've always wanted them to just take your time and just, really flesh out a Pokemon game, because they're always adhering to the schedule of the anime, of merchandise, the trading card game. There's so many things that have to line up that go along with the game, and some of these projects get compromised because of it. And if they just kind of take their, it does feel like they're taking their time more so this time than others, especially with the anime is kind of Pokemon Horizons is kind of being stretched out a bit on it's a Netflix series now, and we're still on Gen 10 or no Gen 9 with the trading card game, and I just hope that we kind of slow it down a bit so that we can really see these games reach their higher potential. And that's we've already seen some of that with how the fact that Legends ZA doesn't really have anything to show quite yet. They let us know that it's in developments, and they're going to show us when it's ready. But I kind of doubt that we'll see anything for Gen 10 before we even see what Legends Z8 looks like and how that gameplay is like as well.
Yeah, like the anime is pretty loose now. Like it used to be like a game came out and then an anime based on that region aired. But now, like, it's quite a gap between the game and the anime. And then when the anime does air, it doesn't really. It's not a direct adaptation of the game anymore. They kind of just do their own thing now. So I don't think that's as much of a factor. It's more the trading card game, I suppose. But I think you can adjust that time frame for a game launch.
I think I'm glad you guys have been bringing up the other media for Pokemon, because I think that's something that folks often disregard or forget. Like Pokemon, while it may have launched as a video game first, it is no longer just that. The video game is just a single pillar on a much bigger structure. We've got the trading card game, we have the anime, we have merchandise, including shirts, toys, all kinds of stuff, and all of those things have to work together. You take movies, for example. Famously, like Lucas, when Star Wars came out, the deal he took is he took merchandising money instead of the film, returns and whatnot. And that was a really good idea because those toys were flying off shelves. Unfortunately, the way this stuff works is they kind of have to work in tandem with merchandising. If that stuff's already been made, the game's gonna come out because it has to. So there's a lot of restructuring that has to be done in order for schedules like this to be expanded. And maybe that's something they started before Gen 9 even launched, I would hope, so that we could achieve something a little more direct with Gen 10. But like you guys have been mentioning, the anime is playing a little bit more loose with the story. It's telling an original tale now. And I think that might be the beginning of them planning to make these changes. So I think I'm in agreement. I don't think Gen 10 actually comes out next year, despite, tradition. And that can only be a good thing.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm seeing Concierge love in the chat. Concierge is the best thing that's happened to Pokemon in like 15 years. It was so nice. I'd love a Concierge game. Like, just give me all the Concierge.
That and just inject some of that new Pokemon Snap vibes into it. Just have Concierge. You're taking pictures of the Pokemon all on vacation instead.
Please give that to me.
So, in regards to Gen 10, I know we've talked a lot about what didn't work for Gen 9, but what do you want to see in Gen 10?
I don't want to move the camera down and see the map below me.
It would be nice if the game wasn't a broken mess. Yeah. That can only be improved by having more time. For me, I'd like to see Gen 10 still attempt like an open world direction, but introduce level scaling for the gym leaders. Allow that to be a little bit more free, or don't even do gym leaders. With Sun and Moon, they had a completely different thing going on. And I'd like to see them try that again. Maybe the Pokemon formula needs to be unearthed a little bit more than it was with like Sun and Moon and Scarlet and Violet. And maybe open world needs to look completely different than the way we imagine it.
It'd be interesting if they expanded the online to be a little bit like Dark Souls. And by that I mean like other players can sort of invade your game and battle you just out of random. Like, you can opt in and out of it. Like in the Wild Area and Sword and Shield, like you'll sometimes see other players and the game would like lag awfully if you did that. But I'd love for it just to see like other players wandering around the world. Some of them are friendly, some of them are hostile. You sort of like work together. Well, I guess a bit like Mario Wonder as well. Like sometimes they're there to cause trouble, other times they're there to help you. I'd love just to be able to everyone sort of band together in some way in the open world.
I would love it, and I know this would be a take because of how some people are about the Pokedex, but I'd love if we would try to do the formula that Black and White did and just have that gen's Pokemon.
That was my favorite.
Only
yes.
that, only that gen's Pokemon for a large stretch of the game, so that you're forced to use not your old favorites. And I was also thinking, as you were talking about Alola, something that was maybe like open world, but you're exploring the oceans instead on a water Pokemon now. Maybe your mounts, instead of like you had for your mounts in Scarlet and Violet, that legendary can instead be one that's attuned to the water, and you're surfing from these different islands, and you can see, I don't know what the region would look like or what it would be based off of, but I would love if they would just do that again and just like force people in a kind way to just use these new Pokemon generation only. I love that about Black and White.
That was the best thing for sure. They had some cool tech in the Pokemon Scarlet and Violet updates that allowed you just to play as any Pokemon. Like, you just move them around. It'd be interesting to see where they go with that, because they gave every Pokemon controllable animations, also walking animations and swimming animations. They always go back and forth on whether Pokemon can follow you, and sometimes when they do, it's not quite what you want. Like, sometimes they don't like copy your speed, they fall behind you and you lose them. Let's Go was the best at that, where you could they would all follow you, but you could also ride on some of them. Like, you could use Gyarados to swim, or you could use, I don't know, Tauros to actually physically ride on. I'd love to see them expand upon that within an open world, like being able to just get on a flying Pokemon's back and literally just fly up.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things about Scarlet and Violet that kind of falls short is that the Pokemon exist in the world, but they don't really add to it in a meaningful way, if that makes sense.
They're static.
Like, they're static. They don't feel integrated. And that's something the anime does really well, which obviously is a much easier thing to pull off. But, it's fun to see, Pokemon being, construction workers and having jobs or just doing silly stuff out in the wild. Having a little bit more of that kind of interaction in Gen 10 would be awesome.
Yeah. We could learn from Power World and give them guns. They haven't done that yet.
Oh boy, here we go.
Here it comes. It had to be mentioned at some point.
I know this is like a Pokemon Legends thing, but I really like the act of throwing the Pokeball myself.
Yeah, me too.
I don't know how you'd integrate it in a more traditional Pokemon way, but just let me throw the ball myself, please. That's all I need.
It's such a much more tactile feeling, and it makes you feel like you're that much more of a. It's such a small thing, relatively speaking, but if you feel so much more like an actual Pokemon trainer to just press a button to actually throw them out and not just wait for a battle to start instead.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a visceral feeling. It's the one thing that kids could do when watching the anime back in the 90s was throw a ball and pretend you were throwing a Pokemon out. And they took that whole idea and turned it into a gameplay mechanic, which is great. Having something small like that in Gen 10 could go a long way. Gen 10 is also interesting because 10 is a big milestone, isn't it?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. We're already past 1,000 Pokemon, and now we're at the big double digits with generations. That's insane to think about.
Do you think they celebrate that in any way in Gen 10? Especially, we're saying it's not going to happen next year, then it would fall in line with the 30th anniversary.
I think if we get close, I can't imagine the game itself releasing on the 30th anniversary. That feels like a little bit too long away from this point, but I'm sure they'll do some kind of celebration one way or another with that game once it rolls around.
Yeah, they very much celebrated Gen 1 in Gen 6 a lot, in X and Y. Though they gave us those starters again. And we can't dance around. There were some Pokemon leaks, and in some of that data they talked about bringing Gen 1 stuff back in there to appeal to the lapsed gamers who grew up with those games. So I feel like we've kind of done that already. I'd rather they just keep moving forward, I think.
It feels like most games celebrate Gen 1 in one way or another,
Yeah.
honestly.
Yeah, like Leon having Charizard and everything, yeah.
I mean, you look at TCG Pocket, which just came out, and it's largely the 151 right now.
Yeah.
There's no Johto Pokemon, and I'm extremely upset about that.
I think it's kind of hard to predict Gen 10 because they very rarely just do an iteration. Since Gen 6, I'd say, they've from Gen 7 onwards, they've been trying to innovate with Pokemon and do new things. I think that's what they're going to continue to do. I don't think it's just going to be a more stable version of Gen 9. I think they're going to come up with new ideas and new formulas, and I'm really excited for that. I don't think they're just going to play it safe.
Yeah.
I guess I guess my last question then would be, is this a Switch 2 game or is it a Switch game?
Well, we know Z is a Switch 1 game. I don't know. I think it's probably Switch 1. That's what Game Freak tend to do. I mean, like Black and White launched like a month before the 3DS. And then Black and White 2 launched in like the second year of the 3DS. And then we had like Ultra Sun, Ultra Moon in the first year of the Switch. I think they're probably going to stick around with the Switch as long as they can. But I suppose there's a different... it's a bit different here because Switch 1 and Switch 2 are going to be quite integrated. You know, we know they're backwards compatible with... Well, Switch 2 is backwards compatible. It's hard to say, isn't it? Because it could go either way.
Yeah. Yeah, Pokemon is known for releasing their titles just at the end of an entire generation for consoles, even past that as well. So I wouldn't be surprised if it is Switch 1. I kind of want it to just be on Switch 2, just because of the fact that they're working on some more powerful hardware might help to alleviate some of the grievances that we have with previous titles. But as you're saying, like, I mean, they're going to probably release games for the Switch 1 well after the release of Switch 2. Yeah. So I wouldn't be surprised either way, honestly.
And regardless of the direction they take, it will be playable on Switch 2. That's just a fact. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I think I'm in agreement. I don't think this is a Switch 2 title. I sincerely hope it takes advantage of Switch 2 hardware if you play it there. But it's really hard to say if that would be something that Game Freak would have time to do or would put time into.
Mm-hmm. Right, because that's the thing. Like, if you take a game that looks like Scarlet and Violet and you put it on Switch 2, it's still going to look like Scarlet and Violet. Like, you can make it neater, but it's not going to change everything, is it?
Yeah, there's only so much you can do.
Yeah. So I'm pretty confident it's a Switch 1 game. Install base is already there. Pokemon Company International, they love money, and you know they. Famously, they were not going to even bother with the Switch at all. And they backed out of that plan real quick.
Do you remember?
So
that was, I think it was either E3 or the week before E3. They just they had the president at his desk to announce that they were doing a Switch RPG. They had nothing to show. It's just him at his desk saying, "Yes, we are bringing something to the Switch," and that was the entire segment.
Yeah, like we heard you. We're gonna bring Pokemon to the Switch.
A thinly veiled, we messed up.
Oops.
But yeah, I think Gen 10 is a big curiosity in the Pokemon world right now, especially considering how silent Pokemon has been for the majority of this year. I am curious what Pokemon Legends ZA will look like when we eventually actually get to see gameplay. But until then, Pokemon, you know, they've been kind of quiet lately, and makes me do a big think.
You just reminded me, speaking of quiet, another thing I hope we see, let them voice act Gen 10.
Oh, yeah.
Please.
There's very awkward scenes in Scarlet and Violet.
There were some key moments that would have been so much better if they were voiced in Scarlet and Violet, especially towards the end.
They're lip synced. they sync the lips to the unspoken dialogue. It's so strange.
They had like promotional trailers of like the professor we had a voice. Yeah. I forgot her name, but the idol as well. She was voiced in something, and they never actually committed to it. Just commit to this, please. Oh my gosh.
And even the opening cutscene of Sword and Shield, like, there's the announcer in the big stadium. Clearly, his mouth is moving and he's speaking, and there's just
the crowds
no
are
audio.
Roaring, like there's background noise, but it's just dead
so
silent.
Silly.
Yeah,
yeah, that's a big one. I hope that comes to fruition. And the nice thing there is that, you know, the Pokemon anime has been running for so long. There's lots of voice actors from the anime that would be able to come over to the games and vice versa. Yeah. It'd be really cool if if someone got cast to voice a character in the game And when they make their anime appearance, they get to voice them there too.
Yeah.
That'd be really neat.
Yeah, it doesn't even have to be
just
all
makes
the
sense.
dialogue, just those cutscenes that have.
Yeah,
You're not asking for much
major-
here, just less awkward scenes there.
that's really all it needs.
Yeah, just the bare
Yeah.
minimum.
If that's all they can do, I'll take it because we know how Pokemon just likes to do things in baby steps.
I can't. That's so funny that we're asking for the bare minimum.
Please.
But we've got what is Pokemon Day in February?
Yeah,
So
February.
Mhm.
we're 2 months out from maybe future announcements, maybe our actual first look at Pokemon Legends ZA. So it's kind of coming up here. But until then, Gen 10 is a big mystery, and I hope it ends up being something that we can talk positively on for the most part. Subscribe to Good Vibes Gaming if you want more discussions like these. We're doing a lot of them right now, and if you like the video, please leave a like. Tell us what you want from Gen 10 in the comments below. Tell us how you felt about Gen 9. Just don't yell. Just, keep your voice
Not all
down a little
caps.
bit.
All lowercase,
Yeah.
please.
All lowercase,
Please.
please. We're begging.
Indoor voices.
But thanks for watching. We'll see you next time. Keep the games good and the vibes greater. Bye now.
Bye, everyone.
Till we meet again.